The debate continues over community choice and how it impacts clean energy goals in San Diego.
It's a ticking time bomb. It's a sword of Damocles, and it's hanging over our head.
Worries over nuclear waste at San Onofre. We take a look at the alternatives.
So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
And just in time for the new football season, the political message behind Nike's new campaign starring a quarterback without a team. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. Aspen and Georgetown have done it. Now San Diego is close to choosing a pathway to 100% renewable energy. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says all eyes are now on Mayor Kevin Faulconer.
We have embarked on a very ambitious climate action plan.
Faulconer gave opening remarks this morning at a forum on community choice energy. That program would allow the city government to choose where residents and businesses source their electricity and how much they pay for it.
In the coming weeks, of course, I'll be making a decision for the city of San Diego on our pathway to clean electricity. And this, along with the other steps that we are taking, really is going to place us with that goal of 100% renewable energy by 2035. That is the goal.
Opponents of community choice include the shareholders of SDG&E's parent company, Sempra Energy. They argue community choice is too risky for taxpayers. Despite their opposition, the Community Choice Forum host, Nicole Capritz, says she was encouraged by Mayor Faulconer's remarks.
He talked about the need for San Diego to continue to pioneer, to be at the cutting edge, and that's exactly what community choice offers. It's exactly the model that's been demonstrated to be proven successful, in 140 other cities in California. So it's absolutely time for us to now embrace choice and actually bring and accelerate clean energy to San Diego.
The city council has to vote on how to achieve its clean energy goals by the end of the year. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Governor Jerry Brown has launched another push to fight the effects of climate change. He signed an executive order today directing state agencies to work together to protect plant and animal species in the face of climate change. The order calls on agency chiefs to come up with plans for educating the public about threats to biodiversity and to work to conserve native species in their habitats. This comes ahead of his Global Climate Summit next week in San Francisco. Thousands are expected to gather in San Diego tomorrow for the Rise for Climate March. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson has details.
Marchers in San Diego will be joined by concerned residents all around the world. People are getting together at the Civic Center and then the South Embarcadero Park to speak out about the threat climate change poses to the planet. San Diego 350's B. Miller says there is no question the situation is getting serious.
Climate change is real, and it is happening faster than anybody expected. We don't have a lot of time. We need everybody's help. We need everybody on board, pushing our leaders to get something done.
Miller says recent fires, floods, hurricanes, and other natural disasters prove that there is a threat. The march is happening the weekend before Governor Brown's Climate Action Summit in San Francisco. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Former President Obama issued a severe critique of his successor today during a speech at the University of Illinois. He says President Trump is capitalizing on the same resentments, fear, and anger that politicians have fanned for years.
It shouldn't be Democratic or Republican to say we don't target certain groups of people based on what they look like or how they pray. We are Americans. We're supposed to stand up to bullies, not follow them. We're supposed to stand up to discrimination. And we're sure as heck supposed to stand up clearly and unequivocally to Nazi sympathizers.
Obama heads to Anaheim tomorrow for a Democratic rally near Disneyland. He's helping 7 candidates competing in Republican-held congressional districts, including the race to replace Darrell Issa. During a campaign stump in North Dakota, President Trump says he's not impressed with Obama's speech.
I'm sorry I watched it, but I fell asleep. I found he's very good for sleeping. I think he was trying to take some credit. He was trying to take credit for this incredible thing that's happening to our country.
On board Air Force One, Trump also said the federal investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election is not only bad for the country, it's also unfair for the midterm elections. House members have voted to investigate a pair of congressmen who were indicted in two separate cases. The Ethics Committee voted yesterday to investigate Congressman Duncan Hunter and Chris Collins. Hunter and his wife face charges of using campaign contributions to cover personal expenses, including family vacations and dining expenses. Collins was charged with insider trading. Tijuana's police chief says the department is going to work with migrant rights groups to improve its treatment of migrants and asylum seekers heading to the U.S. KPBS immigration reporter Jean Guerrero has more.
Pueblos Sin Fronteras organizes the caravans of asylum seekers that President Trump has lamented on Twitter. The group was protesting alleged Tijuana police abuses against migrants outside the police department. Group leader Irineo Mujica then scored the group's first meeting ever with Tijuana's police chief. The meeting came days after he was arrested for an alleged affront against police while protesting the jailing of a Honduran boy. Mujica says the Tijuana police regularly prey on Central Americans and other migrants heading to the U.S., and that they arrested him because they thought he was a Central American too.
They said we didn't have rights in this country and that they were going to deport us. They thought I was another undocumented person that could beat up and mistreat and nobody was going to care. They don't think of these people as humans.
An hour into the protest, the police chief told Mujica he'd be willing to speak in private with a few of the activists and escorted them inside. The police chief's spokesman confirmed that the officials agreed to work with Pueblos Sin Fronteras and other migrant rights groups to improve police treatment of migrants and other vulnerable people in Tijuana. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
The family of the late baseball star Tony Gwynn has settled a wrongful death lawsuit. A trial was set to begin in San Diego next year. The settlement is being reported by the San Diego Union Tribune and other local media outlets. Gwynn's family claimed the makers of the Skull brand chewing tobacco was responsible for his death. Gwynn began using the product in the 1970s before warning labels were included. San Diego teachers are settling into their first school year without mandatory union fees. KPBS education reporter Megan Burks spoke with their union president to find out how much has changed since the Supreme Court's Janus rule 2 months ago.
The court ruled public sector employees don't have to pay so-called fair share fees to help cover the cost of union representation. Before Janus, you paid those whether you were a member or not. San Diego Education Association President Keisha Borden says the local union had about 350 non-members paying the fees. That means a $350,000 loss for the organization this year. And of about 6,000 dues-paying members, 10 have opted out since the ruling, costing another $10,000. To cope, the union will rein in spending and won't fill 2 staff vacancies.
We've done some reorganization, so I think as an organization, we've worked together to make sure that all of our members are getting what they need.
The California Teachers Association, which spends heavily on lobbying in Sacramento, reports losing $7 million following the Janus decision. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
California's insurance commissioner says claims so far from the Carr and Mendocino complex fires add up to more than $840 million. The Carr fire in and around Redding accounts for more than 90% of that total. Both fires damaged or destroyed more than 1,200 homes and businesses. Updated numbers show insurance claims from last year's wildfires add up to more than $12 million. Environmentalists and people living near San Onofre are expressing mounting concerns about what is happening with the highly radioactive fuel buried near the beach. This is about 50 miles north of the downtown San Diego. KPBS North County reporter Allison St. John is following this. So, Allison, the latest is that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is set to come next week for an inspection of the near accident at the plant. What exactly happened?
Well, this is all in the context of what Southern California Edison is doing right now at the plant, which is decommissioning it after it shut down in 2013. And they're moving all the spent fuel out of spent fuel pools into the dry cask storage just 100 feet from the beach. Now, what actually happened was at a community engagement meeting, we heard from a safety inspector named David Fritsch, who talked to us about this near accident. Here's what he had to say.
There were gross errors on the part of two individuals, the operator and the rigger, that are inexplicable. So what we have is a canister that could have fallen 18 feet. It's a bad day. That happened. And you haven't heard about it. That's not right.
What does Edison have to say about all this?
So Edison's chief nuclear officer, Tom Palmisano, immediately at that meeting admitted that this near accident, he called it a near miss, had happened. He had revealed an earlier accident, so this is not the first accident they've had. They had a broken pin a few months ago, so this is the second mishap, or close mishap. So he talked about it and he said, yes, I should have talked about it. But he basically said that it would not have harmed anybody in reality.
The industrial safety concern for a drop would be while that canister is sitting on that edge and let's say wedged in the download position, by lowering the slings on the crane, could a drop have occurred? Okay? It appears unlikely, but you can't rule anything out. So it's an industrial safety issue in terms of a drop. The canister itself is designed to withstand that, but that doesn't excuse it. So a serious near miss, if you will, in terms of a rigging issue.
Allison, what do we know about the NRC's inspection?
Well, they have put out a document which is telling us what they're going to inspect. They will not come on the air and talk about it with us, which I think is disappointing. But they point out that they're going to be inspecting the worker training. One of the things that the whistleblower mentioned was that perhaps the training was a bit lax. They're going to look at the equipment to make sure all the equipment is functioning properly. They're going to look at all the policies and procedures. But perhaps the most interesting thing that they're going to check is they said they wanted to look at what Edison's plan is, if it's necessary, to take the fuel out of the canister again, lift it back out of the concrete vault where it's being buried, to check if the canister is okay. And at a previous community engagement meeting, Edison told us that nobody has ever actually taken the nuclear waste back out of a canister and put it back into the pools if there was a problem. So this is quite an interesting question. What would they do if there was a problem? And at the end of the inspection, they're going to decide whether it should require an augmented inspection, which would mean further inspection. But I think it's worth mentioning here that it's not just this short-term risk we're talking about, it's the long-term risk of leaving that waste on the shore 100 feet from the ocean with sea level rise, seismic activity. We have no guarantee that the federal government will find a long-term permanent site for this waste, and so it could stay there for a long time. And Attorney Mike Aguirre actually sued the Coastal Commission, the California Coastal Commission, saying you shouldn't have granted a permit for this in the first place. Here is what he has to say about the dangers we face.
It's a ticking time bomb. It's a sword of Damocles, and it's hanging over our head. There will be a major problem, incident at San Onofre sometime. It may be in the short term, it may be in the long term, so we have a limited amount of time.
So as we just heard from Attorney Mike Aguirre and from environmentalists who are raising concerns, people want to see this nuclear waste possibly moved, but what are the options?
Well, there are some options. None of them are particularly hopeful. One of them would be to move it to an interim storage site on Texas and New Mexico. That might require some change in congressional regulations. The Congress has passed a bill that would allow that. The Senate has not, and it remains to be seen if the local people would agree to it. There's another option which Mike Aguirre favors, which would be to move it to the Palo Verde nuclear power plant in Arizona, which is just 45 miles west of Phoenix. Again, they've said no, but he would like to really push that. He says there's a lot of nuclear waste there now, why not put some more there? And then another third option would be to deal with it locally, which would be basically to admit that we're the ones that use the power from this power plant, and still keep it where it is on Camp Pendleton, but move it to the other side of Interstate 5 so that it's just a little bit further away from the ocean, up on the mesa. However, the military, the Camp Pendleton, the Navy have said that they are not interested in moving it. So none of these options appear very hopeful right now, and I think a lot depends on public opinion and whether people speak out and whether the decision makers actually take action to make a decision to move this waste.
North County reporter Allison St. John, thank you so much for this update.
My pleasure, Ebony.
California is a key battleground in the race for Congress. San Diego is a hotbed for those who want to repeal the gas tax. And despite a booming economy, it's a struggle for many seniors to find work. Join us for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
We have a hot weekend ahead in San Diego. Julia Wyden has more in tonight's forecast.
Good evening. We are in this dry period of time where we're going to see temperatures continuing to soar. Your weather headlines, heat building as we head through the weekend. The sky stays dry with no wet weather in sight. We do need that wet weather, though, but unfortunately, again, none to come. Looking at your satellite and radar imagery, all is clear, all is quiet. On your bigger picture, all of California is pretty quiet, even up into Nevada through Arizona. We have an area of high pressure that's just off the coast. That's going to be steering our airflow, becoming a little bit more northerly, and as a result, we're likely not going to have much in the way of that marine layer in place. So overnight hours, expect things to stay rather clear. Your forecast for the overnight, up towards Oceanside, 62 degrees. San Diego tonight dropping down to 70. Borrego Springs going to be warm at 80 degrees. Again, in San Diego, we'll have temperatures in the low 70s. We'll get a couple low clouds around, but again, with that marine layer dissolving, we're really not going to see a whole lot in the way of thick cloud cover or fog. Your forecast for tomorrow will be up to 84 in San Diego. Should be around 84 in Chula Vista. Temperatures soaring into the triple digits towards Borrego Springs. Again, the heat cranking up through the weekend. And as we head on into early next week, I do think we'll start to cool off just a touch. But again, staying very warm for the next several days. Here's your coastal forecast. High temps in the mid-80s for Saturday and Sunday, dropping back down to upper 70s for Tuesday and Wednesday. Inland areas, 96 Saturday and Sunday. Again, cooling off a touch for next week, highs back to the upper 80s. We'll be at 84 degrees in the mountain region for your Saturday afternoon. Plenty of sunshine, and in our desert areas, scorching hot for Saturday and for Sunday. Temperatures back down to about 104 to 105 as we head on into next Tuesday and Wednesday. Back to you, Ebony.
Nike takes a stand, Amazon invests in San Diego, and new job numbers are out. Earlier today, I spoke with SDSU marketing lecturer Mira Kopik for the Friday Business Report. Mira, welcome. So
Thanks,
jumping
Ebony.
right in, Nike this week has been getting a lot of attention for its new campaign featuring Colin Kaepernick.
Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything.
What has been the business impact of aligning itself with this athlete turned social justice activist?
Well, Nike's launching their campaign for the 30th anniversary of the Just Do It campaign, and they're really taking it up a notch, and I'll explain in a minute. But the business impact when this was announced and people saw the video and the ad was that initially Nike stock price declined a little bit. There was some negative reaction on the internet. People were burning shoes, cutting the swoosh out of their shoes. The president said, what was Nike thinking? But Nike was very strategic in this, and if you're a marketer, what they're doing is actually quite brilliant.
And speaking of that, long term, is this a case of Nike taking a huge financial risk, or what you alluded to as far as it being strategic, long term wise, do you think that the decision makers at Nike think that this will pay off?
Well, what's interesting is that Nike, from a brand point of view, is one of the most consistent brand marketers in the market anywhere in the world. Their original Just Do It campaign was almost as controversial. They showed athletes throwing up, falling down, bloody knees, and doing everything it took to win. And here they're doing something very different. They're blending culture, activism, and kind of politics in a way that is uniquely compelling. You know, Colin Kaepernick isn't in a uniform, is not associated with the NFL, but the athletes that he's talking about, a young boy wrestling with no legs, a football player playing with no hand, a skateboarder falling on the rail. Those kinds of things really supersede and really take Nike's Just Do It thing to a really big level. And who they're targeting is the millennials and the Gen Z. These are the people who really matter to Nike. It's not the baby boomers, it's not even the Gen Xers, it's those 13 to 30-year-olds that are going to be making the decisions in the future.
So moving on, the jobs report came out, and what do the unemployment numbers tell us?
Well, it's generally a good news story. The unemployment numbers, there's 200,000 jobs. It was a little bit more than the forecast. Unemployment stays at 3.9%, so the labor market is tight. When I looked at some of the types of job openings, the average job opening is getting 50 to hundreds of applications per that job opening, and real wages went up, and they actually went up more than it did last month. On the other hand, there are some worrying signs in this jobs report in particular. Manufacturing jobs actually declined. The government actually revised their manufacturing jobs down by 33% over the last 3 months.
And speaking of jobs, Amazon made an exciting announcement for San Diego. The company is set to hire hundreds of new workers in San Diego. Will this help San Diego become that tech hub that some people have been pushing for? Why would Amazon make this investment?
Well, it's interesting. Amazon it has 17 tech hubs across the United States. And San Diego has a very important tech hub because they have a lot of workers focused on Amazon Web Services. They have a lot of workers focused on Amazon Digital Studios. And that's going to more than double the number of engineers, computer scientists, people focused on cloud computing. This is important for San Diego. San Diego's been extraordinarily successful as a city, drawing in for the last 10 years healthcare, life science type investments. There's a lot of tech jobs in life science, but traditional tech really has taken a back seat since the first .com bubble burst in 2000. So not only is Amazon very important to San Diego, but the announcement a couple of weeks ago by the realty firm that acquired Horton Plaza, where they're going to make that a tech campus, and there's going to be 4,000 tech jobs coming out of that. In combination, these types of things will help bring those kind of workers and help balance our economy.
SDSU marketing lecturer Mira Kopik, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, former President Obama takes on his successor as he delivers a rousing call to Democrats to get off the sidelines. That's at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
More than 3 million people call San Diego and Imperial County home. Our KPBS Explorer project traveled to 5 communities, and we spoke with people about the places they live and work. In tonight's Where I Come From segment, we visit Calexico, where people say it's more than just a low-key border town.
First of all, we're a border town, which is unique in and of itself, that 2 cultures combine to blend into one.
80% of the people here in Calexico have people residing across the border. So we're a big family.
We have our own subculture. We live in the United States, but we're so close to Mexico, we're the border to Mexico, and then we create our own little language, our own little maybe celebrations, because we do celebrate American tradition, but also we celebrate a lot of the Mexican tradition.
It's a weird but also special place because, you know, the majority of us are Mexican. It's kind of like occupied Mexico, but the culture is just so weird in that you have so much from Mexico, you know, but we're still American.
Because we're on the U.S. side of the fence, you know, you have a different culture altogether than the traditional Mexican family. But yet you're holding on to those very strong roots.
We're right next to the source of migration. We're actually going back and forth all the time.
Everyone knows each other. And even if you don't know them, they seem to know you.
You know, the diet that we follow is still pretty traditional. But then we listen to music in English instead of Spanish more of the time. And so those little, you know, nuances we adopt.
I feel like you have to live here to understand. I feel like people just pass by through here and it's like, oh, it's just like another small Mexican town, but it's like low-key so much more than that.
You can watch the rest of the series at kpbs.org/whereicomefrom. We like to hear about what you think about our series. You can join the conversation on our KPBS Facebook page. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. And tonight we leave you with Sun Valley Gun Club performing at Capitol Public Radio. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.
To each item of memory, I stood in the basement, staring at a pile of broken boxes. I'll see you again in a few days, but that doesn't seem to matter. There were years after all during which you were years away. There was a lonely month on one end, and it made me feel very far. It made me feel very far. I'm playing outfield. I'm wearing a helmet that smells like leather. I'll see you